Good morning from Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. One of the questions that we get kind of often is, Tim, what kind of camera do you use, or what kind of camera do you recommend for going to the park? So today I decided to come out to Magic Kingdom and bring 4 cameras with me. We're going to start with the most affordable and work our way up to the most prosumer level camera that we have, and I'll let you guys decide for yourself which one you guys like the best. Just as a little precursor to that, we do always recommend that you guys start with a phone if you guys are interested in vlogging or filming something, because everybody has a phone, or most people have a phone, and most of those phones have great video cameras on them. So recommend you starting there before buying something else. But if you did want to buy something else, we got 4 cameras for you to check out right now, and we'll put Amazon associate links in the description and in the comments down below so you guys can check out these cameras as we go. Let's jump right into it, and we will start with the very first camera, the most affordable, which is a DJI Osmo Pocket. Let's switch over to that right now. So we are now on the DJI Osmo Pocket, and I have it hooked up to my phone, and I have a little handle on it and everything. But what we're gonna kind of do with all of these cameras is just kind of walk around Magic Kingdom, kind of get some walking and listening to the audio and getting some views around, and then we're gonna get on one dark ride with each camera. So our very first dark ride is Winnie the Pooh, so that's what we'll be using this on. So let's just get some views around Magic Kingdom and head towards Winnie the Pooh. So this is a gimbal, so it should do a pretty good job of eliminating my walking as we go down, as far as keeping it nice and stable. And it's very easy to use, so I think that this is probably one of the best cameras to get if you're interested in bringing something very small and very portable with you to a theme park. So one of the things that I have found about this camera is it does take some getting used to do the gimbal, and the audio is not the best, but for the most part, it's pretty good. It also won't do as good in the dark as some of the other cameras that we have with us today. But one of the things that I do like about this camera is if I see something in front of me that I'm like, oh, I want you to show you guys that, I can do this and show you guys what's going on this direction. One of the other issues that I have with this camera is there is no zoom, I don't think. Let me try this really quick. No zoom at all. I don't know, you won't be able to zoom in any. Some of the other cameras that we have with us do have a zoom, just something to keep in mind as you're picking a camera. One of the things that we do kind of often is we show food. I don't have any food right now, but I can do a close-up of these flowers so you guys can see how well the focus goes up close with this camera. So I feel like I'm about maybe 8 inches away from these flowers, but if I get any closer, I think it goes out of focus and it can't focus any closer than that. But it does look very cinematic. That's for darn sure. First ride to test out the cameras on? Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Now I'm gonna do my best to get fast passes for everything. And when I say dark ride, I mean like Winnie the Pooh, Buzz Lightyear, Ariel's Undersea Adventure. Might stay away from Haunted Mansion because that one's really dark, but rides along those lines. We haven't even gotten on the ride and it's already having trouble with the low light situation here. Here we go.
One day, on the neighborhood, the east wind traded places with history.
Oh dear, hang on tightly, Roo.
One thing that I feel like I have to do with this camera is hold it just pointing forward, because if I try to turn and look at something on the side, oh, I guess it does a pretty good job. I put it in tilt lock, because there's 3 different settings on it. I can do tilt lock, I can do first person view, and then I can do follow. So if I were just talking to the camera or walking around, I would do follow. But because we're on a ride, I did tilt lock so that it doesn't try to grab onto something and follow it. Oh yeah, we're really in the dark now. Kind of having a hard time seeing a lot of different things here. Oh, I can barely see that. Wow, this section is very dark and I can barely see anything on the camera. I can see it just fine in person. Another thing that I should note is that this camera is capable of shooting in 4K 60 frames, but because we film the majority of the vlogs in 1080 60 frames, I'm just going to film everything in 1080 60. So every clip you see will be 1080 60.
As the rain went away, and everyone gathered together to say,
I do like that this does a good job of adjusting to the bright lights everywhere. So when we're coming out of the darkness, you can't see much in the darkness, but as soon as you see a bright light, it works. We can see what's going on. So there you go. That was us using the DJI Osmo Pocket, walking around Magic Kingdom on a ride, checking it out, seeing how it works, seeing how it does as a vacation style camera. Now we're gonna switch over to the next camera, which is the GoPro Hero 7 Black. So let's switch to that right now. And thus begins our trial of the GoPro Hero 7 Black as a theme park camera. First thing I can tell you guys that I do not like is that the GoPro does not have a screen where I can see myself and can like make sure I'm in focus, make sure I'm framed up right. Also, you can zoom on this camera, but it's a little bit weird because it's a digital zoom. It's not a manual zoom, so you might get a little bit of like pixelating once you get a little bit further in on the zoom. I'll show you guys what I mean. One thing I didn't realize is that you cannot zoom while you are recording. So right now I'm just kind of pointed in this direction, and I'm gonna stop the recording and then zoom in and show you guys what I mean. So now I've zoomed in on these trees on the top of Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and hopefully it's starting to show up a little bit where it's a little bit pixelated, not as good of a quality as it was when it was zoomed out. Also, it seems to be a little bit more shaky. So our next dark ride that we're gonna go on is Voyage of the Little Mermaid, which I think I have at 12:30. So I've got about an hour to walk around. We might try to change it, but let's try to do some of the same tests that we did on the DJI Osmo Pocket on this GoPro Hero 7. One of the things that I should say about this GoPro Hero 7 is I do have like a little tiny tripod on the bottom of it, just so I have something to hold on to. I have used it without that. When I'm at the water parks, I just use it with like a hand mount. That's what I like at the water parks. I don't normally bring it to the park, so I figured I should use a handle because it's so small. One thing I did find while I was using it in the water parks is that it kind of like, if I have my hand around it, it messes with the audio. Like maybe I'm kind of blocking one of the microphones or something like that. So I would suggest using a little handle on it. One thing that I don't like about the GoPro is this is a very wide angle lens on this. I have it set to wide, not even ultra wide, which ultra wide is 170 degrees. But I just have it set to wide, so you can see I've got like a lot of room in the lens here. So like Space Mountain is not really that far away, but it looks so far away on this camera. So we're over here by these flowers. Let's see how good it does as far as focusing close up. I can't really tell. The screen on here is very small. I think it does okay. When I say small, the one on the DJI Osmo is much smaller, but I had my phone attached to that so I could really see the screen well on my phone. I cannot tell if this is in focus or not. We're about 4 inches away though. So if I back up, this is about the distance the DJI was. And you guys can see this is much wider of a shot. Now that you guys are seeing the footage, which I won't see until it's been edited, how does the stabilization on the GoPro compare to the stabilization of a small gimbal like the DJI Pocket? I'm gonna head into Storybook Circus and head into my favorite souvenir shop, Big Top Souvenirs, to see how this does with a little bit of darkness inside of a shop. And we can see how this reacts going in from bright sunshine to the darkness of a shop. That kind of switched over pretty quick, and we'll check it on the way out too to see how it does on the way out. For the most part, this does not look too terrible inside of this shop. It's kind of similar to the lighting that I see in here. So, I don't know. This I feel like does better than the DJI. We're gonna get on the ride and find out a little bit more, but this is just a precursor test inside of a shop. They have the Briar Rose Gold Spirit jersey over here. I thought that this was blue. It's kind of looking green in here. Is this not the Briar Rose Gold? Is this just something else? I'm gonna keep an eye out and look, but, well, it looks different underneath this light. Up there it looks green. That's probably because that's a yellow light. But down here it looks kind of like a dark gray blue. I think this is it. It's time for our next Fast Pass, which is Voyage of the Little Mermaid. So let's go over to it and see how this camera performs on a dark ride. Let's head into Voyage of the Little Mermaid, our next ride on the list. One of the biggest audio issues that we have with our camera is waterfalls. So right now we are heading back behind a waterfall. How does this sound? Also, how does my voice sound over top of the waterfall? Because the waterfall is very loud. Here we go. Now we're starting to see the true colors of this camera in the dark. Not looking so good here in the queue for Voyage of the Little Mermaid. Yeah, I know that this ride might be a little bit darker than Pooh, but I feel like this camera is doing much worse in low light than the DJI Osmo Pocket did. We'll see once we get over to Ursula, it gets really dark there. The one thing I will say about these little cameras that I can't say about the one that we use most often is that they're holding focus really well in low light conditions. The camera that we use most often, the Canon G7X Mark II, has a hard time holding focus when we're in low light situations like this. It does look into the dark better than these little cameras do, like the GoPro or the DJI Osmo Pocket. I do want thingamabobs. Oh, I'll take at least one. Maybe about 3. I do feel like I can just kind of point this camera in the direction that I want to show easier than I could the DJI. Because the DJI is a gimbal, so it kind of has a little bit of a mind of its own. Whereas the GoPro is supposedly has what's called hyper smooth, which is supposed to be gimbal-like stabilization. But you can point it wherever you want because it's all digital stabilization rather than actual physical stabilization like a gimbal. We're heading into a very poorly lit area.
Great power.
Yes. So if you guys are ever on a ride and it slows down like this, that's not because the ride is breaking down or anything like that. That just means they're trying to load somebody on that is having trouble getting on. Like maybe somebody trying to transfer from a wheelchair or somebody that needs a little bit of extra time to step into their clamshell. This scene looks pretty okay with this camera. Not too bad. Another thing that I do is when I'm talking to the camera and you're not looking at me, like the camera's pointed at something else, I am talking directly to the camera, like almost right on top of it. I'm about 3 inches away from the back of the camera right now. So there you have it. That was our testing of the GoPro Hero 7 Black. I always forget that I have to hold this camera a little bit closer to my face because it's so wide. Normally I hold the other camera way out here, but speaking of the other camera, we're gonna switch to the camera that we use most often for vlogging, and that is the Canon G7X Mark II. So let's test it out right now. Here it is, Old Faithful, the Canon G7X Mark II. This is my favorite camera to use. It does well in low light, it's nice and stable, and I can see what I'm doing. Let's go see if we can find a fast pass. There's just something about this camera. The audio is good, the video is good. One thing that I do have to do every time I start filming is I say a word first to get the audio to kind of focus in on my voice, and then I start talking. Also, it zooms. It zooms in really well. Ah yes, the luck of the fast pass. I feel like I ride Pirates of the Caribbean every single time I come to the Magic Kingdom, but that's just kind of the luck of what happened right now. I wasn't trying to get Pirates of the Caribbean. The closest one that I kept finding was at 6:15 tonight, and then I refreshed one time and one popped up in 5 minutes from now. So we're headed over to Pirates of the Caribbean. The next fast pass that we get hopefully will be something that we haven't ridden in a while. Just letting you guys get a view of what's going on around Magic Kingdom. Some nice views. And I'm also walking so you guys can see what the stabilization is like with this camera. Let's see how the focusing does on this camera. I feel like I can get really close to what I'm trying to focus on, and it holds it really well. I'm about 2 inches away from this flower right now, and it's doing great. Although I don't feel like this is really a dark ride, it's more of a boat ride and it's pretty well lit. Small World's only a 15-minute wait, so if we can't get a fast pass for our last ride, we can always show off Small World. One of the things I feel like I wouldn't have been able to point out on one of the other cameras is a real close-up shot of this duck, which I don't know if very many people are showing off the ducks on their vacation footage, but you guys know I look at birds around the park. Also, I don't know if I'd be able to point out this pastel very well down here. One thing I like about the Tangled area in between Haunted Mansion and Small World is that they have these hidden pascals all over the place. There's a bunch of them. This is just one of them. Into Adventureland, heading over to Pirates of the Caribbean. Like I said before, we have ridden this ride before, so you guys have actually seen the footage from this ride on this camera, but we're gonna ride it again just so you guys have a point of reference after seeing all the other cameras. Well, it's official, the cooler weather has left Magic Kingdom. Also, there are little baby ducks over here. Oh yeah, here's the perfect description of the camera having a hard time adjusting to brighter light levels. See, with the other two cameras, I would have to get really close to these ducks so you guys could see the ducklings. But here, I can zoom in until they go into the shadows. Already doing way better in low light than any of the other two cameras did. In line for Pirates of the Caribbean. Even though this is very dimly lit, you can still sort of make out the two skeletons playing chess down there. The one thing about this camera is it can do better in low light than I have it set to. But I like this setting better because it doesn't sacrifice any quality to do better in low light. And I'll show you guys what I mean after we get down the drop here. So here's the setting that I normally use. Here's what it looks like on a second setting that I feel like does better in low light. Here's my setting that I like a lot better. Like I said, I feel like the quality is a little bit better. So I turned on slow shutter, and that should make it work better in the dark. Let me turn it off. There you go. This is regular shutter speed. I don't know. I don't think it's worth it to do any of the low light settings on this camera. I feel like as long as you just leave it on the settings where it's just doing the best that it can, I think it does pretty good. It's doing way better than the DJI or the GoPro was doing. That is for darn sure. Like I said, this is the camera that you guys see most often, so all of that footage was probably very familiar to you guys. I did also want to say that this camera is the only camera that we're showing today that does not do 4K. I can't film anything in 4K on it, and this is mostly the reason that we do 1080-60, because this is the camera we use most often, and this is the one that can't do 4K. Also, because we do a video every day, I feel like 4K footage is pretty heavy for the computer to handle every single day. But with that being said, let's move over to the prosumer level of camera. This is the camera that we have the least experience with vlogging with. I use this for shows and fireworks and all that other stuff. Occasionally a dark ride because it does really good in the dark. This is the Sony a7 III with a Tamron 2.8 28-75 lens on it and a Rode Video Pro Plus microphone. As you guys can see, the footage is not as solid, even though there is stabilization in the camera. It's not as steady as the other cameras that we've used today, but the picture might be a little bit better, and the focus should be a lot better. This is the best focus that we've had on any camera. So let's walk around and get some footage with this. And that right there, the shakiness of the footage is one of the reasons that we don't use this camera as often. I know a lot of people do use larger cameras around the parks, but I feel like the Canon G7X Mark II does a really good job. Somebody mentioned this to me on Twitter. They're like, the camel that spits water is gone. And I honestly didn't believe them because I was like, what, the whole camel? Look, it's gone, it's not there. I have literally never talked to this camera while I walked around Disney. It's very big and heavy, but we are on our way over to Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin so I can show you guys how this one does on dark rides, because this one does really good in low light. There's another Sony that's called the A7S II that does amazing in low light. That's the one that we use for horror nights and stuff like that, but this one does pretty good. You guys know I've been kind of showing off flowers all day today because this camera has zoom on it. I think the closest focus that this camera will do is somewhere around 12 inches if I'm not zoomed in. So let me try here. Oh yeah, much closer than 12 inches. That looks pretty darn good. It's got a nice close focus range on this lens. One thing about this camera is there's no screen, so I can't see what I'm filming. If I'm recording, if it's in focus, I'm just kind of relying on the fact that I push the button and the camera does a good job of focusing and finding a face in front of the camera. I don't know. Hopefully it's actually recording this. One thing that we could do with this camera that would help with the stabilization is get a gimbal. But then we're talking about this is already a big camera, and then putting it on a gimbal, making it even bigger. I just like going to the parks with the Canon because it's nice and small, can fit it in my pocket. I have a little pouch that I wear on the side of my hip that I take it around in, and I can take it on all the rides, don't have to worry about it. It's nice and light, easy to use. I think the Canon is like, that's why we use it so much. That's my favorite camera. Here we go, last dark ride of the camera testing Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin. One thing that I'm sure is very noticeable is how different the audio sounds when I'm in front of the camera versus behind it. Because this is a directional microphone. It is super cardioid. I know that that's another term that you guys might not know, is that means that it picks up the majority in front of the microphone, but there is a small section behind it that picks up audio too. And I don't think that that is a very good section to be talking to. So I think that the audio is not as good as all of the other cameras that we've been using today. Well, better than some, but not better than the Canon. Here we go, we are inside the ride now. All of the other cameras would not be this bright. The Canon probably wouldn't be too bad in here. The other two would be very dark. Thank you. Yeah, this does pretty darn good in lower light situations like this.
Stand by to disengage autopilot. You've got the stick, Space Rangers.
But like I've said, the audio has definitely been a hard aspect of doing the videos because this is a really good microphone, but if I'm behind it, it's not as good as if I were in front of it. Also, aim for that right there because you'll get more points if you shoot on the back of his hand. If you can aim for that Z on the top of the volcano, just keep hitting it. You get lots of points. Also, there's Z's up on top of this spinning area up here that are worth a lot of points. Always go for the Z's that are harder to find. Just one hit was 50,000 points on the top of that volcano. Also, the harder to hit Z's over here, like on the chainsaw, at the bottom down there, those are worth more points. All the little green aliens are stealing the batteries, so it doesn't matter. Oh, we're going through the escape hatch. I had no idea that's what this was. I always spend too much time trying to get a higher score. See, like all of the other cameras, you wouldn't be able to see any of this that's going on right now.
Power on Zerg's secret weapon.
Also, how does it work in here when I'm pointing the camera at myself? Like, I know that it's a fairly low light situation right now, so how is it working? How did it do on focusing when I turned it around? How did we do? Even the Canon can't read these numbers over here when they're happening. So 50,000, we're Ranger class. Ranger first class. I could barely even read that. Press penny machine here. That's one of these super press penny machines. So $1 each or $5 for all 8. Pretty good deal. Here they are. Here's all of the different pennies that you can get. So one last thing that I wanted to do before we put this camera away is I wanted to let you guys hear the audio just straight from the camera without the Rode Video Pro Plus microphone, because it will sound a little bit different. So right now there's a lot of noise all around us. We're in a very busy theme park and we are going through the Rode Video Pro Plus microphone with a dead cat on it, like a wind muff. So let's undo that and let you guys hear what this camera sounds like without any augmentation to the audio. So here it is. This is what the Sony a7 III sounds like, just straight out of the box. Just the regular audio, built-in audio on the camera, nothing else. It's very tinny to me, like it's very high pitched. So let's switch back over to the Canon, our normal vlogging camera. Oh, it feels better to be back using the G7X Mark II. I know this camera inside and out. I feel a lot better using it than I did using any of the other 3 that we tried today. But it's pretty good. Like, it was a good example of all of the different cameras, riding 4 different dark rides, 4 different cameras, and also going around the park checking out different things. So there you have it. That was our trip to Magic Kingdom to kind of go over 4 different options for people that were interested in learning about different cameras and how they perform around a theme park. So if you're looking for a camera to take on vacation, or if you're wondering if the camera that you have is a good camera to take on vacation, hopefully this video helped you out. In my opinion, the Canon G7X Mark II is the best out of all of them. The easiest to use, the most portable with the highest quality, and the audio is good, and you don't have to really do too much to know how to use it. What did you guys think? Do you guys have the G7X? Do you guys have any of those other cameras? Do you guys know of a different camera that I should be using instead, or maybe you guys prefer? Let me know in the comments down below. And with that being said, we are off. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
We're the Kellers, and we're from Hamburg, Pennsylvania, and now it's time to pay the price.